Her Grace. Oh,
I'm not sure the other one was recording, even though it was there. So I'm doing a backup recording.
okay, I'm gonna restart. Hare Krishna, welcome to the 2025 Celebrating the Sacred Feminine, brought to you by the ISKCON Vaishnavi Ministry. My name is Pavitra. I'm a junior in high school in Mission, BC, Canada. Today, we're talking about the topic of fame. I'm joined by Nitya Kisori Mataji, the Vaishnavi and devotee care representative for ISKCON Vancouver. Today, we are speaking with Her Grace Vrinda Devi Dasi Mataji from Winnipeg, Canada. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, Krishna explains various ways that we can see him in the material world. Bhagavad Gita 10:34, Krishna specifically says the divine seven feminine qualities for this campaign celebrating the sacred feminine. We will be delving into these qualities, examining each of these qualities so that we can deepen our relationship with Krishna and his devotees. Today, the Vrinda Prabhu will be addressing the quality of faith.
I'm fortunate to introduce Vrinda Prabhu. So Vrinda Prabhu serves as zonal supervisor for North American Zone 1 and is a member of the North American Regional Governing Body and the Sabha. With a professional background in financial systems and public accountability, she brings expertise in governance, finances, and organizational systems to her ISKCON service. Vrinda edited Heart and Soul Connection, a devotional guide to marriage, service, and love, and the Vaishnavi Marriage Challenge for the Grihastha Vision team. She is also the author of the Ram Club and the Rathayatra Rubies, an adventure novel for pre-teens. She chaired the North American RGB until 2025. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share your valuable wisdom with us. So we will begin with the verse, what Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, and we will delve more into the topic. So Bhagavad Gita 10.34, Mrityu sarvaharaschaham udbhavascha bhavishyatam kirti shrirvakcha narinam Smritir Medha Dhritir Kshama. Translation: I am all devouring death, and I am the generating principle of all that is yet to be. Among women, I am fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience. And I will invite Pavitra to read the purport, please. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. As soon as a man is born, he dies at every moment. Thus, dying is devouring every living entity at every moment. But the last stroke is called death itself. The death is Krishna. As for future development, all living entities undergo 6 basic challenges. They are born, they grow, they remain for some time, they reproduce, they dwindle, and they vanish. Of these challenges or changes, the first is deliverance from the womb, and that is Krishna. The first generation is the beginning of all future activities. The 7 opulences listed, fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience, are considered feminine. If a person possesses all of them or some of them, he becomes glorious. If a man is famous as a righteous man, that makes him glorious. Sanskrit is a perfect language and is therefore very glorious if after studying one can remember a subject matter, he is gifted with a good memory or smriti. And the ability not to read many books on different subject matters, but to understand them and apply them when necessary, is intelligence, meda. Another opulence, the ability to overcome unsteadiness is called firmness, or steadfastness, Dhriti. And when one is fully qualified, yet is humble and gentle, and when one is able to keep his balance, both in sorrow and in the ecstasy of joy, he has the opulence called patience, Kamsa. Hare
Jai Shri
Krishna.
Prabhupada. Thank you, Pavitra.
Mhm.
So talking about fame, you have any questions?
Yes. So, Mataji, what do you think is the general understanding of fame?
General understanding of fame. Generally, it seems to be if people know who you are, right? If people have heard your name before, or when they see your picture, they go like, that's whoever. So, there's lots of different levels of fame. There's fame right in your own hometown. There's fame in your own temple. There's fame in ISKCON. There's fame in North America. There's fame all over the world. There's fame in sports, which they could be totally famous all over the world in sports, but I wouldn't know their name. There's fame in, literature. They could be somebody that, I'm kind of like, yeah, I've heard of that person. They wrote such and such, but other people are going like, never heard of them. So the fame is, it's kind of rare that there are people that are famous enough that everybody in the world knows them. There's a lot of people that are a little bit famous, like TikTok influencers who have millions of views, but you and I have never heard of them. So, so fame is like people have heard of you. People recognize your name or your picture when they see it.
Yes. And along with that question, I'd also like to ask, how do ISKCON teachings view beauty and external appearance in relation to the soul?
Well, and fame, any of those things are a little bit fleeting, right? They're attached, they're intrinsically related to this body and this lifetime. And of course, something like beauty might not even last the whole lifetime, but they're related to our body and this lifetime, whereas our soul, the true us, the jiva, is eternal and has an eternal relationship with Krishna and has spent time in many different bodies, doing many different things over many millions of years, probably. So any of the external things, while real, they're real, like they're not imaginary or hallucinations. They're not permanent. So they're not as valuable as something that is permanent, like our true identity. Does that answer?
Yes, it does. And also, is seeking fame a form of Maya bad, or can it be used into the service of Krishna?
Very interesting question. Okay, seeking fame. So fame can be used in the service of Krishna if you've got it, right? Like when somebody famous says that they will be sworn into office on the Bhagavad Gita instead of on the Bible, everybody goes, oh, Bhagavad Gita, that's interesting. Let me find out more about Bhagavad Gita or something, or, oh, isn't that nice? They recognize Bhagavad Gita. So fame can be useful in glorifying Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, our tradition. But seeking it isn't a very useful activity. I mean, if you've already got it, like there is a saying that everybody gets their 15 minutes of fame, right? To some extent, everybody will experience a little bit or a lot of fame. To a large extent, that will be dependent on their past actions, right, in previous lifetimes. So their karma may deliver to them a chunk of fame, or not. And somebody else may do something very, very similar and get the fame that the other person didn't get. The fame is not necessarily coming from what you actually do, but more from what you deserve and what you need in your life to learn the lessons that you need to learn in this lifetime. So the fame may come or it may not. And so there's not much point in seeking it, because even if you seek it very diligently, you may not get more than your 15 minutes. And even if you don't seek it, you may get it. So seeking it is not a really valuable use of your time. But if you are acting in ways that and end up in the circumstances that somebody happens to notice, you will get a little bit famous, it's interesting, like there's also Bhagavad Gita verse about one must learn to tolerate, and it has a bunch of opposites, right? Just like summer and winter seasons, Tom, we need to tolerate honor and dishonor. And we could say honor is a bit like fame, right? So we can understand we might have to tolerate those negative things in that list, like the dishonor, and tolerate the winter. Or if you live in Texas, tolerate summer. But the idea is that even the good side of that, like the honor, also you just need to tolerate that too. And for one thing, it's probably going to be fleeting. So, tolerate all those conditions while they're happening, and just continue to keep your eye on the goal, which is, restoring our relationship with Krishna. And like we said before, the fame could end up helping glorify Srila Prabhupada, but seeking it is not a good use of your time. And seeking it could just, like, if that's your goal, then you might be deviated into doing something that is not in your best interest, just to collect the fame, you hope. Like, there's so many people that take selfies over the edge of a skyscraper or something, and over the edge of a cliff, and are actually accidentally losing their life while taking the selfie. They became famous for that 15 minutes or whatever, only in oh dear, they had a drastic tragedy while trying to take a selfie. And so they're famous, but what's the good of that, right? But and they're only famous for those 15 minutes. What was the whole question? Because I think I'm only answering the first part of the question. What was the rest of the question?
Excuse me. The question was, is seeking fame a form of Maya, or can it be used in Krishna's service?
Oh, okay. Okay, so seeking the fame is probably counterproductive. It can be used in Krishna's service if you happen to get it. The getting it is probably a lot more dependent on your past karma, your the chart of your like when you're born, the stars are in a certain alignment, and it's sort of like a printout of your karma at that point. And it can be changed, but there will be points along it where the plan is that you'll get, certain things will happen in your life. There are astrological things that indicate fame, right? They indicate there's one of them that's called an abhishek, which is like coronation. And while that little planetary alignment is happening, everybody will honor you and talk nicely about you and how good you are. But it's not because of what you just did. I mean, it's the time for that to happen. And so it will happen. And the other thing I wanted to mention about this is that there are a lot of people who, as soon as they get famous, they're like, ooh, this is not what it was cracked up to be. This is very much of a problem. And they start, can't go to the grocery store except with sunglasses on, or can't go to the grocery store, can't do any of their normal things anymore, because all of a sudden there's all these guys with cameras that want to take pictures of them and want to put it in sleazy newspapers, tabloids, and things like that. And, like there's that way before your time, but a famous lady called Princess Diana. Her death was caused, her life was made miserable, and then her death was caused by people wanting to take pictures of her for newspapers. So a lot of people, once they get famous, they're like, oh darn, like this is a drag. This is a problem now. So seeking fame isn't a good use of your time fame isn't all it's cracked up to be. But yeah, if you get it, maybe you could, if you get it, you definitely could make use of it for Krishna service.
Wow, those are some great points and intents, actually, some of those examples. So Vrinda Prabhu, can you please throw some light on fame in our spiritual life, or from the Puranas? Are there any women that are famous? And what are some life lessons that we can learn from their experiences?
Very interesting. Well, the women in our histories are definitely all famous. They're still famous, like how many thousand years later, right? Some of them 5,000 years from Mahabharata time, and some of them longer from, Lord Ram's time, or in, very, very long ago, millions and millions of years ago. Some of them from more recent times, like Mirabai, or some of the gurus in our Vaishnav line. And, they're already famous. That's why we know about them. So we know about them. Recently, in Vancouver, we were studying in Srimad Bhagavatam every morning in the first canto. So we're hearing about, Draupadi and how she felt when her sons were murdered. We're hearing about Kunti and how she prayed that, the tribulations would come again and again, because then Krishna is with them. So one of the things that I think one of the important lessons from hearing about those ladies' lives, like Draupadi and her mother-in-law Kunti, is that although they were so closely connected with Krishna, and although they were very good devotees, it didn't give them an easy life. Mind you, Kunti seems to have evaluated it as a very good life, because she's willing to go through it all again in order to have Krishna at her side. But we would not call that a soft or easy life. And I think sometimes devotees might think, first of all, that let me align myself with proper religious principles. Let me get the proper manual for human life, and then things will be easier, and I'll have an easier, better life. And they will have a more mode of goodness life, and they may have a happier life, but easier is not really guaranteed. Because look at the Pandavas, look at Draupadi and Kunti, and all they had to go through. And there was even a verse that we studied in Srimad Bhagavatam during that lineup, where actually Arjuna was getting tested. It was about the Brahmastra thing. And it was very clear that Krishna tests his devotees in order to bring glory to them and to himself as well. So there's always going to be tests. And if you look at, those ladies' experience, it's not like, okay, I'll graduate from this test, and then I'll take a gap year, and then I'll get another test. It's kind of like the tests come, okay, you passed that one, here's another one, like no gap year, not even summer vacation. And so I think that one of the things that we can learn from these very famous ladies' lives is that it's not all that easy, and going for, like, hoping for easy is like, nah, it's going to be adventurous. And thinking that we are on the wrong path if it's not easy, that's not it, because we can see how Arjuna, his whole family, Kunti, Draupadi, they were definitely very close friends with Krishna, and they still didn't have it easy. So that's not the criteria. We shouldn't think that because something adverse happens to us, that means that, oh, it's not true about Krishna consciousness, or I'm on the wrong path with this. That's not the criteria. So for me, those are the main things that I'm learning from the famous devotees that are Vaishnavis in our Shastras, is none of it was easy.
Yes, true.
Yeah. And often people do become more famous for living well, like living honorably through adversity, right? There's this saying, a diamond, you know what a diamond is a lump of coal that did well under pressure, right?
So true.
Yeah. So, we can become diamonds during the time frame when we're being heavily tested, if we just remain true and remain loving to Krishna and just, tolerate the summer and winter seasons and the honor and dishonor and the heat and the cold and yeah.
And in
So,
present times, with all this, I'm sorry, were you saying something?
no, go ahead.
In the present times, especially for women, there is so much going on. Women take so many different roles, like a working mom or full-time mom, even serving in a temple. It is so hard to remember this. So, what are some of the your suggestions to remember that this is all temporary and we have to although these are feminine qualities, but how can we overcome that feeling of I may be famous, I may have the steadfastness, I may have proud, those kind of feelings, like how can we overcome those in this modern times?
Overcome the feeling of, so I didn't quite catch what the feeling was.
Of false pride or
False
ego
pride, or yeah, okay. Oh, very interesting. Okay, how can we overcome a feeling of false pride? And well, humility is one of the virtues that is often pointed out as it's when the qualities of a devotee, there's several lists of qualities of devotees or qualities of brahmanas or several lists like that. And humility is always near the top of the list. In the list in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, it's first. And one of the very interesting things about Srila Prabhupada's definition, which blew me away when I first read it, Prabhupada's definition of humility is not at all like I thought. I thought humility meant having a low opinion of yourself, being a doormat, and Srila Prabhupada's definition is different. It's not being very much anxious to be honored by others, right? So it's not looking for fame from others. It's not saying anything at all about your opinion of yourself. If you have an accurate opinion of yourself, you have a low opinion of yourself, you have a too high opinion of yourself, that's not the concern. The concern is trying to get the attention of others to get them to treat you as the star of the show, right? Wow. That whole star of the show thing is how we ended up trapped in the material world, right? We saw how Krishna was being honored and had a little moment of, well, why not me? Okay, you can try that if you want. So here we are with millions of other living entities who are also thinking they should be the star of the show. And we see where that leads us to, like wars and conflicts and exploitation and everybody trying to get more than their quota, which means they're trying to take somebody else's quota. And, so the cure, of course, is that put Krishna back as the star of the show. Be willing to be a minor character in his play. Be willing to get best supporting actress instead of best actress, being willing to let it not be all about me. And so that whole thing about not being very anxious to be honored by others, if a person has a very low self-esteem, that's where they're going to be looking for the external validation from others, right? If they have an accurate self-esteem or an overly high self-esteem, they're probably not too concerned about what other people are thinking of them. So it's the low self-esteem that probably leads to the behaviors that are problematic, where they're willing to step aside from their own goal to please somebody else because they want to be, they want that other person to have this certain response to them or attitude to them. So the idea of humility not being anxious to be honored by others is, not even, it's not even on the same, in geometry and axis, like one and the other direction. They may cross at some point. There may be a quadrant where they interact, but they're not the same thing, right? Fame could happen to humble people. Lack of fame could happen to very proud people, like it's just two separate measurements. So humility is actually, some people can even become famous over being humble. And, we think of some people, we know a lot of people that are famous because they're rich and famous, right? Those two words go together, like some people that are currently in the US government and that kind of thing. But we also do know of people who are famous because they were poor and helpful. And I'm thinking of, say, Mother Teresa. She's pretty famous all over the world, except maybe it's maybe been a while, but during my lifetime, she was famous all over the world. And she owned not much and didn't wear fancy clothes. And, maybe we would disagree with her methods of trying to help the poor, but she became famous for being poor and trying to help the poor. So, the thing that you can be very humble and still end up famous, because that famous thing is happening on like the winter and summer seasons. When it's time for you to be famous, you'll be famous. Until then, you won't be. After that, you won't be. And one of the crazy things about it, like astrology, it's a printout of, for this lifetime, but it doesn't end. Your body won't last forever, but the astrology from that lifetime is carrying on. The planets are interacting and aligning according to and so, then there are people who are famous long after they're dead. And we've just talked about some of the ladies from 5,000 years ago. And also, one thing that is interesting is, like, sometimes there's artists, musicians, who are not at all honored in their lifetime, but then they're rediscovered, 20 years later, 300 years later, and it's all about them now. They're very famous now because the time has come, right? And so there's no point in chasing after that fame. It's going to come when it's going to come. And so that's way we can be very tolerant of the fame, or if infamy, like being famous for bad stuff, infamy, being notorious. We can be very tolerant. It's going to come when it's going to come. When it's not here, it's not here. Don't worry about it.
It reminds me of recently I came across this picture and some little blurb about it. A famous actor, American actor, was in New York, or I don't know which city, but some big city. He was dressed as a homeless person and he was on the streets and no one cared about him. So I feel like what you're saying, resonates to anyone at any time about how, it's what we feel, like what we want is, what Prabhupada said is great. If you don't mind, can you say that again? So our viewers and myself included will keep that in our mind.
The definition of humility?
Yes.
Yeah. Not being very much anxious to be honored by others.
Okay, great.
If we have time, I'm going to tell you a little story about the first time I noticed that in an actual live person.
Sure, please.
His name was Ruplal. He's now Rupa Vilas. And at that time we had pretty much just met him. We were doing some programs. We had a Bhakti Yoga Club at the university, and we were doing some programs at the university, and we brought in Dhruta Karma Prabhu as a guest speaker. And so we were running around getting set up for that. And one of the men in our group had to go run out and get something and come back. He was running up and down the stairs in his dhoti. And so this person in the hallway in the university stopped him and said, "Vaishnava?" And the man in our group said, yes, come, here's what we're doing, and brought him in. So then from then on, he was coming to our programs. And so he was coming to our little Sunday feasts in the house that we were having them, and he became a good friend. And so the Bhakti Yoga Club that we were trying to get going, it needed 17 signatures on a petition. So we're like, the one of our ladies was a student, and she got her whole engineering class of Chinese engineering hopefuls to sign up for our. This was in the days long before a lot of international students from India. So we were a couple signatures short. So I asked Ruplal if he would sign it. And he said, "Certainly, Mother, I'll sign it." And he started to, his pen was poised above the paper. He wrote his name, and then he stopped. And then he didn't write anymore, and he just was looking at the paper. And I said, "Ruplal, what's wrong?" And he said, "It wants my student number. I don't have a student number." And I was like, "Ruplal, how can you not have a student number? You're on the university campus all the time. We met you there. You practically live there." And he said, "Mother, it's a faculty number." And I was like, "Oh my God, you're faculty." And you never let us know.
Wow.
And I just knew that for myself, if I was faculty, I would have made sure that everybody understood that I was not just a student. Anyway, we later learned that he had a what's that word for, he had a patent on a Rasgulla machine that was in use in several factories in India. We never knew that either.
Wow.
So, so that was to me an example of humility. He was not anxious to be honored by others.
Wow.
He knew who he was. He didn't need us to give him validation, and he's still a very lovely person. And the what it kind of helped me understand is that the seeking for fame is actually also a different thing from two or three other things, like leaving a legacy. As humans, we want to leave a legacy, right? We want people to speak nicely about us after we're gone. We don't want the memorials at our last ceremony, our funeral type of thing, to be, "Well, I didn't like her very much, but she's gone now." We want them to be able to say that we added something to their lives, right? Like, we want to leave a legacy. And that's a bit different from fame, but if we don't think about it closely, we might kind of tie them all up into the same ball. So it is appropriate to want to leave the best legacy that you can. Not necessarily to be famous about it and be honored by others, but why would you want to leave a bad or a non-existent legacy? If you're here on this earth doing this journey, do something good with it. So that's a need of humans, I think. And then there's also a need of humans to be actually appreciated. But if you don't get it from the close circle, you might think, well, maybe I'll get it from the wider circle. But maybe better you should change yourself a little bit so that you are appreciated by your close circle, or get a different close circle, so a need to be appreciated is, it's not the same as desiring world fame or something. And then there's another need yet, which is the need for attention. And especially when we have trauma to unravel in our brain, we do need somebody else sitting with us to, lend us a quota of their, it's called holding space for somebody, while they sort out what's going on in their mind with something. So people do need each other for that. And they need somebody who's willing to do that for them. And if they don't get it, they might unawarely try to get it through being on stage and having everybody looking at them, right? And it's, they're like, "Oh, wow, it was so great to have everybody's attention on me." But then everybody goes home and I'm as lonely as I was before, And a lot of people whose career is on stage, like, that's a thing. Like, they've got everybody's attention for those 2 hours. And then not again until they go on stage again, So it's a different thing, like needing the help and attention of other people to sort through our traumas and deal with our life circumstances is different from seeking fame. So there's, to actually get a little microscopic and drill down on what these different things actually are.
And Mataji, as you were saying before, like how actresses or people who do have fame don't tend to get it at the moment, but years later, something happens and they get their 15 minutes of fame, which is so true because, as a teenager who's quite active on social media, like maybe a few years ago, I've watched this movie or I've heard this song and none of my friends knew about it. I didn't think it was a big deal. Next morning, you wake up, check your phone, all your Instagram reels, all your TikTok feed is full of the same song or the same celebrity or the same movie. And it just shows like, and it just like, I've always wondered about that because recently that something like that happened. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I watched this movie when I was younger and like, I loved it, but none of my friends knew about it. Like, this is crazy,
Yeah.
So that just answered my question. But Mataji, do you also think one can maintain goodness while being in the spotlight?
Mm. I do. I do think one can maintain goodness while being in the spotlight if one's desire is to maintain goodness, if one's desire is for Krishna and for their own goals. If they get there's a trap that leaders can fall into, especially political leaders or even like leaders in a not-for-profit movement or something. They can fall into a trap that I have a vision for this. My vision is so important and so good and so much better than anybody else's that I need to be in power in order to make my vision happen. Now, that's not bad. Let me get some power and let my vision happen. But then when there's some things that knock against my power, it's like those people are horrible because they're not following me. And so that's not going to go well if you start not listening to other voices and not considering other positions and other circumstances. That's not going to go well. And even worse, if it is like I have to stay in power at any cost so that my wonderful vision can manifest, right? Because then you start to compromise yourself. Then you end up doing things you wouldn't do as the good person that you started out as in order to stay in power. Like, let's give a crazy example. Let's say you're the mayor of New York, and I don't actually really know the politics around being the mayor of New York, and I know there's some criminal investigations right now, but I'm not talking about that because I don't really know what it is. But let's say you're the mayor of New York, and you've got this wonderful idea for New York, and you're totally, it is a good idea. And some criminal gets a chance to finds out one little wrong thing that you did and starts blackmailing you, right? And they say, give us this whole subdivision for our real estate thing, or we'll tell about this little thing. Or they say, donate $1 million to this cause, or we'll tell about your little thing, right? And you go like, well, that's a bad cause, and that's you're blackmailing me. Maybe I should kill you. And you do it because you think that you should stay in power no matter what. So that's when it gets bad, is not because you were famous or you were in power, but because you took your eyes off your original goal and put your eyes on, I have to stay in power. And when you put your eyes on, I have to stay in power at all costs, then that's when the bad stuff happens. So totally you can be famous and maintain your goodness if you don't mind if the focus goes off you for a while, or you get sidelined for a while, or you even get treated unfairly for a while, or you even get after some point somebody says, I'm going to tell about the one bad thing you did. You hired illegal immigrant as your nanny, so I'm going to tell on you or whatever. If you go like, yeah, I did that. If you can't have me in this role with having done that, I step down, then you're fine. But if you go like, oh, please somebody shoot that guy so he doesn't tell that that I did something wrong, then yeah, that's the problem. But the problem isn't being famous and maintaining goodness. The problem is wanting to stay famous.
That's right. And also, Mataji, like, since I'm still a junior in high school, um, you know, since I'm going to university soon, I think it's quite normal and um common for kids or to feel like, oh, I have to prove something or I have to do something that will make me stand out for maybe to like excel in school, excel or appeal better to universities. But do you think is like seeking such type of validation like a form of distraction?
Nowadays, I do believe that it is important to be able to show who you really are in a good light when you apply for anything, a job, and the next university, the what being somebody that somebody's parents think is a good marriage partner, and any of those things, you have to show yourself in your best light. And that's as long as it doesn't become untrue, right? As long as you don't lie or cheat or, then it's just it's just writing your resume. On your resume, you say what you have accomplished, right? And so definitely you should do that. That's not the same as seeking fame. That's just telling it like it is. And then that's what the particular circumstance that you're in asks for. Please tell us who you are so that we can decide if we want you at our university or not, right? So you tell them who you are exactly. And if you are smart enough to go like, oh, doing some volunteering along the way will look good on my resume, I'll do some volunteering, and you actually do it, yes, you're a person who did some volunteering. Tell them, right? They are asking at that point. What you're doing with your resume is giving it to somebody who, or your CV or whatever they're calling it. Somebody has asked and you're telling. You're not taking that same document and going to the temple and standing up in the Sunday feast and saying, look at my accomplishments, like that would be different, right? You're not doing that.
It's a great question, Pavitra, and great response, Vrinda Prabhu. And even now, Pavitra, you're doing a great service here for ISKCON Vaishnavi Ministry, being
Thank you,
here
Mataji.
with all the assignments that you have, applications, so busy life. I understand how it is for high schoolers. And it's a very great cause because we are learning from great Vaishnavi, Vrinda Prabhu, and, about our goal as even Vaishnavis in this world.
Right, Mataji. And Mataji, I also have another question of why does ISKCON emphasize on humility when the world rewards as like self-promotion?
Yeah, that's right. You get into that college from self-promoting a little bit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the world does. It always looks like the world rewards self-promotion. Sometimes it's very temporary, especially if it's not totally true. But from the length of our lifetime and the amount of information that we can handle, it does look like people are getting ahead because of their self-promotion. Because their bubble may get burst like 5 to 30 years later, and we may or may not know about that part of it. So it might look to us like the self-promotion got them what they wanted. There's tons of stories and movies about things like that where the mean girl managed to make it look like she's the good one, and the actual good girl is getting, but by the end of the movie it comes out, right? The truth is known. So it may always look like the person who is self-promoting is getting ahead, but I'm just going to put that little qualifier. We don't know the end of the story yet, right? And we also don't know what their own family and friends think of them. Usually their own siblings know what they're like pretty fast, and things like that. So although there may be some ways in which they get ahead, there may be other ways in which they're wrecking their life by some aspect of what they're doing. But if you're always telling the truth and saying it nicely, although there's this there's these I don't know if it's kind of a cartoon, but the idea that if you step on people on your climbing up of the corporate ladder, watch out, because those are the same people you're going to meet on your way back down. So, even those who are self-promoting should self-promote as nicely as possible, because they never know what's going to happen at the other end. But the reason that ISKCON isn't really so interested in any of that is because our goal is way bigger than a 30-year or 50-year career, or 80 or 100-year long life. Our goal is getting out of the material world altogether and getting back where we belong with Krishna, and being back in the spiritual world, being back with our spiritual identity. So the humility will be much more conducive to that. It will allow us to treat devotees better, and the association of devotees is so important to our spiritual growth. So humility is going to, there's this, people are always asking, other like elderly people or people that seem to be spiritual, to bless them, right? Please bless me. Everybody's coming up and saying, please bless me, please bless me. We never did that in the old days, and Srila Prabhupada taught us that we don't give blessings, Krishna gives blessings. But even the idea of blessings flow down like rain, right? So if we want to think we're big and high, the blessings are going to miss us. But if we think that we're low, the blessings fall downward. Christianity also has an interesting little story. Jesus was using the example of being at an important event. I think it was a wedding. And, at the important event, people are seated at the table based on how important they are. More important, they're closer to the head, right? Closer to the host and the wedding couple and all that. Less important, they're way in the corner of the room. So his advice was, start out sitting low. Sit at, where the not important people sit. Somebody may come and ask you to sit higher. And that would be nicer than starting out sitting high and somebody has to come and tell you, not you, you have to go sit over there, right? So humility is, even practically, it's a better, a safer spot to be in than the self-promotion.
And
Both spiritually and materially, actually.
sorry for interrupting, but I can't help but wonder, Mataji, like I have a few friends at school, and like I'd say all my friends are quite ambitious, including me. But some of my friends aspire to be famous in terms of being like an actress, a singer, and such sort of things. And even if it's not of that sort of like publicity, I think most teenagers have this mindset nowadays with social media that I need to accomplish something of a high level to be known in society or to be accepted, especially if they're guilty about something or they know they did something wrong once in their life. But my question is, with all those thoughts and feelings in mind, is it wrong to be aiming high or being ambitious on like an extreme level that I need to do this and I want to do this? Like, how does it, is it okay to have such type of goals if you want to pursue the ISKCON life?
Yes, no, it's not wrong to have those kind of goals. Everybody's got the desires that they bring from their past life and from their circumstances in this life, and they should try to fulfill those goals in a Krishna conscious way and for the greater glory of, Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, ISKCON. And like some people, that is definitely their path at this time. They can't be anything but a poet. They just got to write. They're writing all the time, and that's different. Like not being able to stop doing something, like artists paint, writers write, like that's different from going like, I may not be all that great at this, but I'm going to choose it because it's going to make me famous. It's rough as a teenager. Like I'm thinking about, little boys, like 5-year-olds. If you ask them what they're going to be when they grow up, they're going to say a fireman, a policeman, a pilot, because that's it. Their choice, what they've seen as exciting careers, is not a very big pool. They're seeing, let me drive some big machinery and that'll be good, right? And so it's that's they're choosing out of a very small list. And I think the teenagers that you're talking about are also choosing out of a fairly small list. They see actors all the time, right? They're consuming a lot of entertainment. They're not as aware of all the other options that people can make life better. They may, they go to the doctor once a year. They don't think of, but they see an actress twice a day on TV, right? So they're not necessarily thinking about a medical career because it's not there all the time, unless their family is, already in medicine somehow. Or they're not thinking about, they don't even know some of these other careers exist. That's why some universities in their first year, they don't even let people choose their major, right? And some universities, like university one, first year, and you just take your classes and you see what you kind of like. And sometimes it'll be because you had a good prof, and sometimes the thing that you thought you were going to major in, you had a bad prof and now you don't like it or whatever. But trying a bunch of things. I think that the teenagers that are thinking that they need to be those type of careers in order to improve the world, it's just, again, they have a small list, a shorter list than reality. Their idea that they should improve the world is good. Improving the world is good. Their idea that they may need to be famous to improve the world may not actually be true. They can improve the world without being famous. But it's good that they want to make the world a better place. Did I miss some important parts of the question?
No, but that kind of brings me to another question. So I live in Mission, which is a very small town, and not a lot of people here follow Krishna consciousness, and they don't even know what Hinduism is, even though it's one of the biggest religions and the oldest religions in the world. So I have to go there and explain of why I don't eat meat, why I don't eat onion and garlic, and why I don't want to go to a party and drink with my friends. And they're like, but why? But you can still do this, and like, you only live once. But I but I often like struggle with like getting my point across because I don't think they view it the same as I do. So I don't know if it's because I've been conditioned as a kid that, like we followed this and that's what's normal for me. But I do understand people have different lifestyles. So do you like if Krishna is like the ultimate source of everything, should we seek to glorify oneself or just him?
If we
Because
seek to glorify, okay, go ahead.
sorry, because most of my friends think, oh, but like, because in my school the other day, I'm part of the physics Olympics, and I don't know how the concept of God came up. And my teacher was just talking about how he's indigenous and they have so many different type of gods. And he was curious to know about Krishna, and he was like, yeah, I've heard about it, all this. But with all my classmates like talking about it, I noticed how they were like, oh, but God's already famous, or God already has like such a high power and everybody knows about it and so many people believe in it. So I think it comes across as like a misconception, like God already has it, like why not me? Why can't I have that too?
Mhm.
Did you mention about the Hare Krishna dance? Hare Krishna's dancing in downtown. That's me. He can say that. I'm Hare Krishna. They're supposed to be cool. Hare Krishnas are cool people. So
Yeah, that's what I say. I'm like, oh, you guys don't get it. Because like all my friends, they get confused
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, you don't get it. But they find it so absurd that you don't eat meat. Like, oh, that's crazy. And I'm like, it's not that crazy.
Not that crazy now. There's when I was growing up and not eating meat, my grandfather was vegetarian, my parents were vegetarian. The only vegetarians I knew were my own relatives. And my mom was very lonely on the prairies because there was hardly anybody else. There was one Seventh-day Adventist family. And but yeah, it's interesting what your friends are saying about God's already got all that. Why can't I have some? Why can't I be? And that is literally the mood that brought us to the material world. We had that desire, and Krishna said, I can give you a playground where you can try. Go for it. Give it your best shot. And yeah, here we all are trying. And we can try. The only problem is we will still only get our quota, and everybody else has their quota, and we shouldn't take theirs. And it's we aren't the supreme. We're the emanations from the supreme. We have the same quality as the supreme, yes. But we're so small. We're so small that we can even get covered over. But I don't know what I don't know what you can say to them when they're having that exact conversation. But what you could think about it for a while, knowing them, like what would be good to say, like Krishna wants you to have your desires. You could say that, God gave you this lifetime to try to accomplish that, what you're trying to accomplish, You can, I think probably the best thing is to let them know that God's never going to give up on them, even if they give up on him and her.
I
So,
think my understanding of ISKCON and Hinduism growing up is like, I feel like Hinduism or ISKCON specifically, more than a proper religion, I feel like it's more like of a philosophy because
yes.
when you read books written by Srila Prabhupada and like the Bhagavad Gita and like other sorts of books, more than talking about like you should wake up and do this and you need to give this to Krishna, you need to cook prasadam and serve it to Krishna before eating it. Like, sure, they're like rituals you do in order to please the God, but the deeper meaning behind the scriptures and verses, I think they're about how you can live a good life on the material world so you can make it back
Yep.
in a good, happy, easy manner.
Yep. So you can actually do your duty. You can actually look after other people. You can actually it respect and appreciate Krishna's divine energy. He says in Bhagavad Gita, this material energy is his divine energy. Yeah, so you can actually appreciate all that. That's totally fine. Yeah. And you're right that, Srila Prabhupada called it, the science of self-realization, and, kind of went away from the idea of thinking of it as a religion, but thinking of it more as philosophy and as science. The science meaning that, if you know how it works, you can replicate it again and again.
And there's a question that my mom wanted me to ask you, which was, can a woman be famous and still follow the principles of Bhakti Yoga?
Yes, a woman can be famous. A woman can even become famous for following the principles of Bhakti Yoga. But she'll be famous. The fame will come when it comes. But yeah, definitely a person can follow the principles of Bhakti Yoga while famous. It's not like it's not like that's mutually exclusive. The fame may come from the Bhakti Yoga, the fame may come from something else. Bhakti Yoga can be constant in a person's life. Person may do Bhakti Yoga and never be famous to anybody but Krishna. But ultimately, when you get right down to it, we're all famous to Krishna. he goes to such lengths to get our attention and try and get us to notice him and return to our true natures. And ultimately, the person that you have to be, the person that you have to please besides Krishna is yourself. When you get up and look at yourself in the mirror in the morning, you have to be able to like that person. So that's the most important person to please in the short run, other than, of course, Krishna. Do you think that would answer for your mom, or do you think there's...
Yes, it would. I think it's a good answer. Then, Mataji, how does Krishna consciousness redefine success beyond material world? Because I believe like some people, including me, to be quite honest, like I'd say I'm quite an ambitious person, and I'm like, I want to do this, I want to become this when I'm older, and I want to go to this, go to law school, this school. But if I reach that sort of success while maintaining devotee life alongside with it, with would I still like have that sort of success in material life? Do you think that type of recognition would follow with me?
Recognition in material life as a lawyer or whatever, while being a devotee?
Yes.
Well, I know a couple of lawyers that that's definitely happening for. They are highly sought after as a lawyer in the law field internationally, and they are highly sought after as a lawyer in ISKCON, and they are a very good devotee. So it's all possible. And but you don't have to have all that. A person could just be a good lawyer, a good, decent community lawyer, and that's their duty, and they're doing it nicely, not necessarily famously, not necessarily that's their service in ISKCON. Their service in ISKCON could be something else: cooking, organizing Rath Yatra, dressing the deities, whatever. And they might not even tell anybody they're a lawyer. And the way we are in ISKCON, nobody may ever ask. They may not know. Although it'd be really nice if we knew what everybody's skill set was, and could actually engage them or call upon them when we need a lawyer, which we do from time to time. So it could be successful as a devotee just because they're doing their dharma, regardless of whether they're doing the legal career also to aid ISKCON in their legal career. So all those aspects are actually they're not necessarily locked in with each other. And I think I want at this point to mention that almost everybody agrees with this sort of statement. Even if a person is a totally successful lawyer or whatever, when they come to the end of their life, they don't say, "Oh, I wish I worked more." They say, "Oh, I wish I'd spent more time with my family and friends. Oh, I wish I'd been nicer to my son. Oh, I wish that's what they wish in the end. They don't wish, "Oh, I'd worked more hours," or, "Oh, I wish I'd made another $3,000 a year," or, "I wish I'd," that's not what they wish. It's the interpersonal stuff is what they long for and wish they would have done. But still, it is important if we take on a role like being a lawyer, that we do it to the best of our ability, and that we don't bring shame on ISKCON or Srila Prabhupada or Krishna by being flaky at it. And people go like, "Oh yeah, those Krishna people, you just can't rely on them." We would not want that as a reputation, right? So it is important to do a good job.
We do have famous people, right? And even in ISKCON, like Ambarish Prabhu, who's been doing so much for the TOVP, great grandson of the Ford people, right? And we do have a lot of actors as well, even in India, who may not be completely devoted to ISKCON, but they are devotees of Krishna. And they continue to, serve in a way that they can, like they give donations, they attend different sevas, and if they buy a new car, they bring that to the ISKCON temple for performance of ceremony, or they get married, they invite the pujaris from ISKCON. So people tend, there are a lot of examples even within ISKCON, or whoever is ISKCON friendly, we can say. And I know that even ISKCON Vancouver, we have someone in our community whose daughter is an actress, and she grew up here, and she continues to be the actress, and she continues doing her, have her faith and chanting her japa and those kind of things.
Yeah. So, Mataji, I have a younger brother who's turning 5 soon, and I'm almost just getting out of schooling, and so I kind of worry looking at how the pace that social media is heading at, and with AI and all these type of new tech stuff that I'm quite interested in, but I also see the dangers and like the pros and cons list, and the cons are weighted more than the pros. So as an older sibling or as someone senior to another, how can I explain in an easy and simple manner or give reminders of why being attached to fame or attention is bad if you won't use it for the rightful purpose as like Krishna service?
I think personally, I think it'd be more like not ever telling anybody that something else is bad, but trying to listen to them carefully to find out what it really is they want. Because it might look on the surface like what they want is fame. So then it'd be like, why? And when they give the answer to that, then also say why. And when they say the answer to that, also say why. There's even a practice, I think 5 or 7 whys. At some point, after more than 2, you will actually get to the real core of the matter and what they really is they want. And then that's what you want to address. Like if he, as a 5-year-old, if he wants it so that I mean, obviously uh, the cognitive level, the experience about discussing his needs are probably, well, you'll have to just see it and see how it goes, but just get to know him as well as possible as a person, and hear about his struggles at kindergarten and at school and all those things, and just try it. It almost never works for somebody to just come in and tell somebody else. Like, I'm telling you all this because you asked. Otherwise I wouldn't. It one of the things about families is I think you really can't tell family members. Like, all you can do is, and even newcomers, like even people that you go to school with, you can't really tell them anything. All you can do is wait till they ask and then answer really honestly. And my personal rule is, however long the question is, for people like that, the answer should be the same length. I'll give you an example of how not to do it. This actually happened. Some brand new people came to one of our Sunday feasts, and they saw Tulsi, a lovely, beautiful Tulsi bush. And they asked, "Oh, what kind of plant is that?" Which is, like they were probably expecting, oh, it's such and such a scientific name, or it's what its name is. They were expecting, a sentence. The girl who answered them told them the entire story of Princess Tulsi's life and Vishnu's her feud with Vishnu and why, and that she told them a book. And they looked pretty puzzled by the end of it. And they left and never came back. Anyway, that was like extreme, right? But the thing is, it's easier and better if you answer their exact question in about the length that that the question was, and let them ask another question, and then answer that in 2-3 sentences or less. And then they ask another question and you answer that one also in 25 words or less or whatever. And that way you will be actually answering what they want to know instead of dumping a whole lot of stuff on them that's way over their current understanding or ability to absorb.
And being good examples, I think, helps also. For example, you're in high school. A lot of times, because the faith is not that strong at that age, and also uh, the information that you have in your brain is not enough. I'm not saying you, but in general, girls or boys at that age, because I've been there also, and I have a son who's going to be 13 soon. So and it's great that you are practicing this Krishna consciousness, and you can be a great example and being good at it, like how Vrinda Prabhu was explaining about being a great lawyer. So whatever we do, if we are good at our profession, doing things accordingly, like not really being flaky, people will look up to us. People will come and ask questions. People will say, hey, wow, you're doing such a great job, and they would like to know more. And again, I think it goes back to that point of being famous. When a Krishna conscious person is famous, and devotees like it so much that, wow, this he's chanting, he's a great devotee of Krishna, and he or she is so famous. Let's become even more better at our Krishna conscious. So it helps. Everyone benefits if a devotee of Krishna is doing well in their service, even just by looking at them and by following their footsteps.
Yes, thank you.
And with your brother, let me say I'm so happy that you're not thinking what an irritating little nonsense and nuisance he is, and that you're really thinking about his well-being and his future. And I think that's really, really nice. And I think he probably looks up to you like anything. And
Yep.
he
And it
probably,
annoys me so much. And there are moments where I'm like, get out, just don't. We're not related, guys. I don't know who he is. He's not my brother, but at the same time, I kind of worry because by the time he's my age, I will be double his age and I'll have a job and maybe I'll live somewhere else. So, and looking at the speed of how things are increasing in the world, I can't help but worry, like, when he's my age, I'm sure he'll have questions and I'm sure I will be the one who he's gonna tell everything to rather than my parents because
yeah,
I'm
oh,
the
yeah,
cool sister.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
at that time, like how like my understanding of it now is quite different. But years from now, like let's say 12 years from now, I don't know how drastically things are gonna change. So what is a good thing or a good reminder to tell someone that, hey, this is wrong because Krishna wants us to follow this to have a good life, good material life.
Storytelling is probably one of the best. And so if you have a common body of stories, either from, Mahabharata onto uh, movies that you've both watched, onto people that if you can, point out the life lessons that can be learned from these actual stories. Humans learn really well from stories, and humans learn really well from other people's mistakes if they're intelligent. So, like if you can point out what, like maybe friends of yours or friends of his, or friends of your parents or something, that he is aware of how it looked originally and how it panned out, then you can use those as examples of, what to do, what not to do. The storytelling of movies is really, really powerful. And sometimes it's beneficial and sometimes it's not so beneficial, but usually in general, there are movies that actually you can actually say, well, look what happened to so and so in that movie. They lied and they got found out, and how did that work? And that's a lot better than just saying you shouldn't, but I don't know if that's helpful, but that's
No, it is because I understand he's quite young and he loves animals, so he's always like, I want to go play with my toys. And that sort of mindset, but I do try telling him stuff, and sometimes occasionally I'm like, if you don't do japa, I won't play with you, just to get him into the habit of doing that. But then sometimes he does it by himself, and I'm like, oh wow. So it's just like a question of like how would you ever explain it to the other person, regardless of age or time, that why do we do the things we do when you're an ISKCON devotee or an ISKCON following family?
Yeah. Well, when it comes down to it, there's only two rules, right? Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna.
That's right.
These are the two rules. So, one of the things, like somebody might ask you why, until the point where you're like, but it's like it helps me remember Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
Was, well, why won't you play with me now? Why are you doing your japa instead of playing with me? Like I like my japa. My japa is, it makes me feel better. It makes me feel connected to Krishna. Whatever you like about your japa, you say, and that it might need introspection a lot of times. It might need you to say, that's a good question. I'll think about that and I'll get back to you after I've thought about it for a while. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
perfectly fine thing to say too. Can I get back to you with that one?
Mm-hmm.
That's perfectly fine.
And Mataji, my last question would be, how does the Bhagavad Gita's teaching on detachment apply to social media and celebrity culture?
Whoa.
Seems to be quite popular these days.
Yes, we have the unusual thing. I don't know if this has ever happened in the world before, but we have people who are famous just for being famous, right? That's what they're a celebrity for being a celebrity. They haven't really done anything much. And that's also kind of more evidence of the fact that, people are going to get famous when it's their turn, when it's their karma, when it's their, on the on the life plan that was laid out when they were born. In this lifetime, they're going to reap the fame from whenever, in whatever lifetime way in the back. But I think detachment is very valuable because there are people who have even ended their life over something that was actually fairly small in the big scheme of things, but it seemed so drastic when they were younger and had never lived through something horrendous before, and so they felt like they could not stay living. But if they understood that, things come and go, winter and summer seasons, tolerate, go get help, nothing is that bad, really. There's always some answer somewhere, and you can live through a lot of stuff, then they would maybe still be with their families and friends. And so I think it's really important that detachment isn't just for spiritual life. It's for just being able to become mature, being able to just live in the world. There are some things that you just have to let go. There's a very famous prayer that I think sort of started with the 12-step Alcoholics Anonymous programs. It's called the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the grace to do the things I can, to tolerate the things I can't change, and the wisdom to know the difference. There are some things that, some things you can do something about, some things you can't or can't yet, or might not ever be able to. And that's life. And just to be detached from the outcome, be detached from being able to make the change or not, and just keep every day putting one foot in front of the other. That's just, the journey is a whole bunch of little steps. And even if the moment you're walking through a storm, it won't always be a storm. I don't know if that helps, but yeah, the idea, Bhagavad Gita's teachings on detachment have helped so many people even people who otherwise are not paying any attention to the other lessons of Bhagavad Gita. But the lesson of detachment is very helpful in maturing.
Yes, thank you for answering all my questions, Mataji. They were very helpful and learned a lot.
Oh, that's nice of you to say. It was so nice to hear all your questions.
Yes, amazing. It's a great conversation. Thank you so much, Vrinda Prabhu, for your time. Thank you so much, Pavitra.
Thank you, Mataji.
Kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yay.
And also a reminder for the viewers that rest of the campaign on ISKCON Vaishnavi Ministry YouTube channel and social media pages is to be followed. So please listen to all the other Vaishnavis that are focusing on different aspects of this verse of 10th chapter. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Happy Ekadashi. Hare Krishna.
Hare
See you
Krishna.
soon. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yay.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.